That's exactly what is going to make these talks today very, very interesting. All three leaders have come out before this summit and said an agreement on Idlib is vital, but that's pretty much where the consensus ends, and they are coming at what this resolution is from very different angles. We've got Turkey and Iran who support the Syrian regime. A victory in Idlib, which is the last rebel-held stronghold now in Syria, would be considered a very important step towards them claiming victory in the civil war itself. On the other side of the table today, we're going to have Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Turkey provides political support to the Syrian opposition. Now, he has stressed in the previous two meetings that Idlib should remain a de-escalation zone, and that is how he is entering today's meeting as well. It is going to be a very interesting discussion, and we look forward to bringing you all the details as to what comes out of this summit later today.
One thing that these three members of the Astana peace process, as you could call it, compared to talks that have taken place in Geneva, Vienna, at New York, at the United Nations, one thing that these three never appear to discuss, and tell us if it's because it's an immutable subject as far as Russia and Iran are concerned, is the future of Bashar al-Assad itself.
Exactly, and that is a very particular sticking point when it comes to working out a resolution in Idlib. There has been some suggestion that a partial resolution could be agreed to today, but Russia has made it very clear that's only going to be on the table if Bashar al-Assad remains in control of Syria and the regime there, and that is something that, as far as Turkey is concerned, should be taken off the table. So it's that political manoeuvring which has really remained a sticking point right throughout all these negotiations, and is really going to be quite a difficult one for them to overcome in today's meeting.
Melinda, thank you very much indeed. I know you're going to be right across that as soon as Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrives there in Tehran. But let's go to Moscow now. Lucy, Russia, a late entrant into the Syrian war, and ever since it started playing a role, it's almost completely changed the balance of power in the country. So where does it go from here? How does it guarantee that there is not a humanitarian catastrophe if Bashar al-Assad's forces decide that now Idlib is their next target, having slowly but surely taken over other parts of the country from the rebels and other opposition groups?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Russia has seemed to back Syria absolutely to the hilt, and it doesn't seem to be any different this time. We know that Russia is preparing with Syria for this offensive on Idlib. There has been a build-up of Russian military presence in the region, not least naval drills that were carried out in the Mediterranean over the last week. So Russia very much seeming, it does absolutely say that it wants to minimize the damage to civilians, and it sees this meeting as a very significant one for coming to some understanding with the Turkish leader. But whether that would be, preventing this all-out offensive on Syria or minimizing it in some way, I'm not sure. We've had some extremely strong language from Russia's foreign minister, for example, calling Idlib a festering abscess of Syria which needed to be liquidated. With that sort of language, it's difficult to imagine what sort of compromise he might strike. But we have been told that Russia and Turkey are in very close contact, even before this meeting, and that the way Russia sees it is that there could be some sort of understanding to distinguish between armed opposition groups and terrorists.
What are people in Russia saying about the Russian military presence in Syria? About 6 months ago, wasn't it? Vladimir Putin said, "I'm pulling the troops out." And yet we continue to hear of certainly Russian warplanes incessantly bombing particular areas.
Yes, right at this moment, it doesn't seem that Russia is pulling out. Certainly, there's been a military build-up. There's a very, in terms of ordinary people, if that's your question, ordinary people here have a lot of pride and patriotism regarding their military forces. We're actually preparing for the biggest war games in 40 years over the next week, which will be carried out in east and central Russia. And people generally do back Russia's intervention in Syria. Of course, this offensive in Idlib could have quite difficult humanitarian consequences, but Russia says that it wants to to get the terrorists out of that area, the people that it describes as terrorists. And as you heard earlier, Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman is currently speaking at the moment on this and other topics. She's just been talking about the situation in Idlib. She called it a hotbed of terror. And said once again that Russia's priority is to make sure that terrorism in that region is eliminated.